Okay. All right, it's 2 p.m., so we're going to get started here. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our monthly webinar for Softvision Suite. I'm Megan Morse. Today, we will be reviewing the product wizard and placeholders. Before we get started on today's topic, though, we just wanted to take a moment to let you all know how much we appreciate you joining us today and understand that you're all working remotely or from home, and we're all dealing with a lot due to the COVID-19 shutdown. So just wishing you and your families are all healthy and well. Next month, we will be focused on how to best manage our forecast and the unusual demand that we're dealing with during these uncertain times. So I'll discuss that a bit more when we wrap up, but just wanted to mention it up front before we get started here. All right, so today, though, as scheduled, we will be reviewing the uses and editing of the product wizard and the creation of the placeholder products. So an introduction here to our customer success team. We're the ones who run your monthly webinars and are focused to spreading the system knowledge and best practices. Here if you've joined us in the past, this screen's very familiar to you. This is us last month, happy and carefree, versus today, what we're dealing with. So we just thought it would be fun to bring a little laughter to you all during this time and remind you that we are all in this together. So if you do have any questions, challenges that you may be facing, please feel free to reach out to your customer success team and we can try to help you the best that we can here. All right, so one other housekeeping item before we get started with the topic here is just everybody is on mute as always, so we would love this session to be as interactive as possible, so please utilize the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen just to interact with us, send us questions, comments, whatever that may be. We'll have time to address them throughout the webinar as well as at the end. And if you do want to speak or say anything, we can always take you off mute. So I just thought I'd mention that as well, in case anybody feels the need to talk about anything in particular. A recording of this webinar will also be made available on our YouTube channel and our support site, like always. So as soon as that's available, we'll also send you a link to that recording so you can access that.
Yeah, actually, someone raised their hand, Christina Cook. I don't know.
See.
Yes. I didn't see anything in the chat, so.
That might have been, now it's gone.
Okay. If anyone wants to, they could just type something in the chat and we'll answer it.
Yep, if you had a question, yeah, or comment, just let us know. All right, so I think we're good with this one. So I'll just pass it off to you, Stuart, then to get us kicked off here.
Thanks, Megan. We're going to review the product wizard. The product wizard is a function of maps, which is a assortment planning system. But it could also be accessed from other modules like product level forecast. A number of users access it in PLF in order to quickly add the product to other offers. The wizard contains all of your item product information like product master, item master, vendor item, assigning products and SKUs, which is like your offer product SKUs, and some other fields. You go into the wizard to edit existing products. So you may want to go in here to update some of your user fields, which are here. We now have 28 user fields at the product master and item master level. And you could also update some of the other fields. It's also used for creating placeholders. Now, these placeholders are these new products. As we're building our offers and maps, we want to reserve those products that we need to build, but we don't have all the information yet. It's not built in the host system, but it is something we want to account for and build so that when it is available, we'd be able to map that product from the host system. And until it's mapped, we're able to go in and forecast, add mix percents, go in, add it to other offers, and that would be retained after the mapping. Now I'll hand it back to Megan.
All right, thanks, Stuart. So there's a couple different areas that you can access the wizard within the application. So just depending on where you are in your workflow. The first one is on the main dashboard. So you do have the option to add a new product or search your existing products using the options under the Maps Planning module. If you are within the Maps screen, using the Prod Options drop-down menu gives you the option to add new, edit your existing, as well as add the placeholder item. So we'll go through all of that in more detail in our session today. And then the third option here, you have that ability to access the product wizard screen located on the PLF edit ribbon on the far right-hand side. So depending on where you are in your workflow, it's pretty easy to add those items on the fly. All right, I'll then hand it over to Linda.
So thanks, Megan. So I'm going to focus on the tabs and how the product wizard is used today and the data within the wizard where that feeds to. So the first tab when you open up the product wizard is the product master tab. And within this tab, you can go in and update information related to the product or the style itself. And so data from the product master actually feeds and is used within the Maps planning screen, within the hot list, specifically the vendor and product tabs, reporting, and then it also updates the materials planning product header screens. The next tab that you will see within the product wizard is the item master tab. And so this is where you can go in and update your SKU or your color size information under a style. This tab will update information basically within the map, specifically the display SKU screen, product level forecasting, again, the display SKU screen and mixed percents. It will feed into the SKU level hot list reports, materials planning and reporting. One item to point out though, if you ever open up the product wizard and in the lower right portion of your screen, you see a little red dot, that is telling you that there is a required field somewhere within the product master that needs to be updated. And until that field is filled out, that required field, you won't be able to, the finish button will not be available to complete whatever changes you're looking at making. So when you hover over that little red dot, you'll see a little box that will pop and it will tell you what screen or which tab to go look at. And then you can take a peek to see, you know, what is missing. In this particular instance, on our item data, you can see that lot size is missing within our required fields. And so until we updated that lot size field, you wouldn't be able to see that and you wouldn't be able to select finish. So, and that works similar for all of the various wizard tabs. So the vendor item tab is used to address your purchasing information. The information feeds materials planning, specifically your action and requisition items. You have the ability that you can highlight an individual SKU and update information for that SKU, which could be pricing or the description. You could also highlight all SKUs, and then if the data is the same, such as lot size or case pack, you could update that for all SKUs at one time. In the middle portion, the bottom of the required section, you notice that this has a default vendor box checked. So in this particular instance, if you were to go over to the additional fields, there are multiple vendors that are currently set up for this particular item or SKU. And so it's letting you know that the vendor we are looking at is our default vendor, which is typically can be fed over on the item master within the IP files. But if you wanted to modify data for a different vendor, then you could select that vendor and you would see the default vendor box would not be checked any longer. So your next tabs, and typically pretty popular tabs, would be the offer product tab. And so this allows you to go in and be able to assign products to multiple offers. It works very similar to the product analysis screen within Maps Planning, and the fact that the planning screen that you can go in and add items to offers. And it gives you the ability then to update data information. There are also other tabs available where you can update comments, similar to how you would in Maps, or page detail information. One item to point out is this should be used for exception management where possible, because when you select finish within the product wizard and you've updated your offer product information, this is going to roll all your offers, which can be rather resource intensive. So you don't want users to be doing their entire assortment management through the offer product wizard if you can help it. The next tab is the assign SKU. So once you've added a product to the wizard, you can go in and then identify what SKUs will be associated with that offer. And so you can highlight all of the SKUs under the select SKU screens and drop and drag that information over. You also have additional tabs where you can go in when you select a SKU to update the data entry information, or you can update comments. So this data feeds over to maps, feeds over to product level forecasting, master scheduling, and is also used within reporting. So then another popular tab is the supplier tab. So if you're a multi-warehouse or multi-echelon customer, you will see that you will have multiple warehouses listed here. And you then can go in and identify which of these warehouses the particular SKU is stocked in. Another tab that is available in the supplier tab is your warehouse defaults tab. And so similar to going into the administration module and the warehouse default screen, you can go into a product code and you could update SKUs to be able to change safety stock or ROP or return and back order information by SKU as well. So this data feeds master scheduling and is also used within the reporting screens. So another type, if you're a client who has kits or manufactured items, there is a tab that lets you go in and be able to look at a kit code. You can add or modify, but you can see what are the component items that are assigned under that kit code and how many units does it require to fulfill that kit code. And there's another section within the screen that's available where if you are setting up codes or kit codes within the product wizard, it allows you to search for the component items. And this data feeds the master scheduling module and also the reporting modules when you're doing any reporting. Another tab is the images tab. And so this is where you can go in and you can assign SKU images. You can assign image type. And the data is used within maps. It's used within PLF and master scheduling. And we just happened to pick an image here. If any of you attended the user conference, or for those people who didn't, it was an early morning view from our hotel rooms at the user conference this year. So nice to look back at that right now. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Janine, who is going to talk about wizard administration.
Thank you, Linda. Good afternoon, everyone. So you might be wondering what determines and populates that product wizard in those different tabs. So in the administration module, we do have a menu selection, which is the product wizard columns. And it has several tabs when you come into this particular screen. The first two are pretty much used by all of our users. These are the product master and the item master tabs. As you can see, the layout for each of the screens is very similar, but what is different is the information that's available per tab. So for Product Master, we have all the fields on the left-hand side. So we list absolutely, positively anything that's up there. And then we have on the right-hand side of the screen, you've got required and additional. So requireds are absolutes that have to be there. So we start out here, we've got a default selection that is required for all of the tabs. And from this point, you can determine from the all field side which products you want to add that must be required, and or you just want as additional fields. The other option that we give you is you might add a few, you might decide you want to remove them, so you can simply hit the plus to add, or you can drag and drop once you've highlighted. And if you've decided you want to remove, hit the X, it'll delete it. The other option that we have is you can mark the different data fields as read only by simply checking the boxes. And what that does is it makes the information available, but you cannot, or the users cannot make any editing to those fields. All right, the next slide is going to show the offer product and offer product SKU tab. And these tabs are more important for those that actually use our system to initiate creating products. We have quite a few customers that all item setup originates within Maps. And then we have many customers that also their host is what is the source for item product information that is then fed into the application. So here you can see that there are on offer product SKU, we have several different data elements that are not necessarily available on Product Master or Item Master. So you can add things like cost each, your list price, you know, all these other data elements that you want to be tagged along, visible within the product wizard, as well as visible within all of the many screens and modules that Linda had talked about. The other thing that I wanted to point out is everything is kind of color coded. So all fields initially start with yellow. The ones that are required are bold and are teal, and all of the additional fields are green. So there's a color legend down at the bottom if you need reminding. And then to scroll up and down to you'd be able to see what other additional fields are available, we've got those either scroll or, and then the ones that I've highlighted where it's the arrow buttons that Stuart is floating over, those will move the positioning of the items in the list. So if you want category and subcategory next to each other, you could highlight and then click the button to move it closer. On the next two tabs, these are vendor and vendor item. So you do have the ability to add all of that requisition, action building information that you want either that you want required, which means the required is that data has to be populated. So whether you're originating it within the product wizard or it's being fed over, those data elements will have to be a part of the the IP file that comes over. You can also do or utilize these vendor item assignments in vendor maintenance as well. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Megan.
Okay, thanks, Janine. So within Maps on the prod options drop down here, we have a couple different ways that you can add existing products or placeholders to your plan. So first we'll review the placeholders. So placeholders is a good option for you to use if you want to quickly add an item to your offer. Maybe you're waiting on the specific item information from your vendor, or it has not been added into your host system yet. This is a good option for you to just continue with your planning process, add these placeholder items to your screen. It's requiring much less fields and definitions as opposed to the product wizard screen. So here you're only going to need to define the product ID, category description, and subcategory. Once you've defined that information, you can then click finish to have that item then added to your plan and the offer that you selected. With the placeholder items, all of these placeholders will be created with that product status code of P. So just a good reminder. All right, the next is copying product. So if you have a product that is existing already that's very similar to a new product you want to create, it will be a quick and easy way for you to create that new product without having to re-enter all of the information. This also can be useful if you are creating multiple placeholders. So you can, as we discussed in the previous screen, create that placeholder and then copy that to create multiple placeholders for your plan. You'll just select that copy products option, and then it will bring up this copy product window here so that you can then search using the existing item ID that you then want to replicate and add a new product ID number to. So pretty straightforward process there. The other one here is the new product. So this is when you are creating new products for your plan. You'll begin by entering in that product ID and all the basic information. Linda walked through all of these tabs in a bit more detail earlier, so we won't discuss everything here, but as she mentioned, you will need to work through each of the tabs and make sure you define all of those required fields before you can proceed to the next and then complete that item to have it created here in the system. All right, so then with that, I'll hand it back over to Janine to discuss mapping here.
Thanks, Megan. All right, so we do have an option that Stu mentioned earlier when we started the webinar, that if you are creating placeholders within our application, we will have to do a step that maps that placeholder to the product once it's created in your host system and is fed over to us. So you can access SKU remapping from the interfaces module. And one thing to call out is the difference between the placeholder and the actual item that comes over from the host. So in the SKU remapping screen, we call the source SKU the placeholder. And the item that comes over from the host is the target SKU. And the real important thing to know about this, that when you do this mapping from the source SKU to your target SKU, any work that you have done in the system so far, so that's all history, forecasts, your offer relationship, page details, etc., all of that information will then be mapped to this target SKU, and that source SKU is completely deleted from forecast 21. So it's just key to understand that. The other option that you have with SKU remapping is it does allow the fixing of items that are interfaced incorrectly. So some examples of that would be, let's just say you've added an additional space between the descriptors, or you might have put a space prior to the actual product number, or you've got a spelling error that's in the system and you want to correct that. You can do that through SKU remapping. One of the things to call out is when the items that are interfaced incorrectly, they typically error out, and usually we recommend you contacting tech support and your CSC to make sure you know exactly what that error is, and then we can give you the appropriate direction to correct the issue. All right, so when you come into the screen, it's split in two. The top part of the screen has an area for the source SKU and the target SKU, and then the bottom grid is the remap job status. So when you first come into this particular screen, you're going to want to look at or enter, the SKU. So you can do a drop down, but if you've got thousands and thousands of SKUs, that could take quite a while trying to find the SKU you're looking for. So you might want to apply filters that will reduce the amount of SKUs that are available in that dropdown. You do need to type in the target SKU, the first 3 digits of the SKU that you're mapping in order to select in the dropdown, and it'll automatically populate all of the data for the target SKU. So I have an example here that shows that I'm wanting to correct the spelling for the color. So I've gone in and edited the descriptor to spell out the color white, and so I'm going to map the source to the target SKU. Now when you do this, it will pop down to the bottom grid and it will say that it's in processing. Once the mapping has happened, it will disappear from that grid. If it didn't pass and it errors out, you will see what the error, pardon me, you would see what the error is. You will need to go in and correct that error before you'll be able to reprocess the remapping. So what we do remind you is that if you do this remapping, you're going to completely delete that source SKU. So we just warn you, make sure you're good with that, and then click OK. One of the things that we can do if you want to be able to see if your remapping did in fact happen. So I know as a user, I tend to want to see that job completed and it looks good. Since it's not available on that grid anymore, there is a DRS report that's available, and it's a FINT SKU remap audit report. And what it'll do is it'll list all of the SKU remapping that you've done, and the message to the far right will show you that it's been completed. If there are errors, it'll show you what errored out so that you can go in and correct it and take care of it. All right, so additional elements that are impactful for doing your place setters, your item setup, using the product wizard, data that's flowed into the system, is we do give you an additional option to, or what we call IP dynamic fields. This is also accessed in the interface module. When you open up this screen, it's going to give you a list of all the different record types that we have in the application. When you select one of these record types, it then will list all of the fields that are a part of that particular record type. It will display whether the option is host-owned or application-owned. So if you want to be able to control specific data that you're seeing in the, well, throughout all of the different screens. So a really good example, as Stuart's mentioned, and as we've mentioned in the past, all these additional user fields. You can opt to manage those within the application, or you can have them fed by the host. Now, the difference with being able to have it application owned is that the users can edit and update this information whenever they need to. When it's host owned, it has to be mapped appropriately in the interfaces, and you would have to do all of your maintenance within your host system to be able to see it in our system the next day. One of the key parameters to mention, I have listed here in the bottom left-hand corner, is if you want to be able to application own any of your P status or those planned status products that you're creating within our Maps application, you would need to have this parameter setting to all. So I just wanted to call that out. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Stuart for the live demonstration.
Oh, thanks, Janine. I'm going to connect to a dashboard. I'm going to first go through how to edit the wizard for existing products. Then we'll create some placeholders, and then I'll go through SKU mapping. So here I am in the Maps product grid. I'm in a particular subcategory with the products. The easiest way is to right-click and go to Product Master. So that's one way of accessing it. The other way is, even without going into planning, I could go here to Product Search. This will search for products, and you could just enter a product ID and select, and it'll bring you into the Product Master. If you don't know it, you could put in a description, and it'll list all these others. Again, this is just a way to find items that you're looking for, to be able to go into the wizard and be able to edit it. One other thing here is product status. If I put P in here, I'll be able to see all my placeholder products that I created. So again, this is a way, if you wanted to know which placeholders you created, you could go in here with the status of P and see a lot of different fields on here, and then select the wizard. But within Maps planning, probably the most straightforward way is to right-click and go to the Product Master. And then this will take us directly into the wizard. So here I'm at the Product Master tab. I have my product description. You can see here, these are the required fields. The one in yellow are the read-only fields. I can't update that, but I could update some of the others. These are the additional fields that I have. Again, mostly you may want to come in here, you may want to go in, double click, update some of your user fields possibly. And so that's the main use for this, is to go in for the user fields, but you could update anything here that's in white, basically. Now, again, how did we determine what's required and additional? That's in administration under maps and forecasting maintenance, the product wizard columns. So as we showed in the presentation, this is product master, all the different fields, and then the required fields, and whether they're read-only or not, and additional. See, the ones in bold are system required. So those are system required fields that always have to be there when you're setting up anything. But I could go here and click and drag and say, well, I want to make scheduler a required field. So this way, when you're in the product master, this would be a required field that you would have to fill out. And you could also go here. The one says color coded. Yellow is unused, green is additional. I could go here. This is one of my new user fields. I could just add it here as an additional. And you can move these up and down. And this is true for any of these. So this will determine when you go into the wizard, which columns I actually see. And I'm not going to save the changes at this point. Well, we do have a question, Megan.
Yep. Yeah, I was just going to mention, we had a question come through. Is the administration screen where you can change what fields are visible in the product wizard available to all users, or is this only for certain users?
This is for all users. All users would be able to access those same columns because it is affecting your IP information. So when you do change that, another user then would see that update when they go back into the wizard. Okay, and the other thing is when we spoke about those user fields, here's the field labels. So we have all these 28 user fields, but you could change them. So then when we're in the wizard, we could see what these are for. We could, repurpose these for ensemble or basic or whatever you want, both in the product and item master. So going back to the wizard, you could see here some of these are renamed. So I could also enter comments here. These are product master comments. And so you could click here, you could set up different comment types in administration, and you could add a new product master comment if you wanted to. If I hit next, I'm going to get to my item master or SKU data information. And so this is going to show me all the information at a SKU level. Here you can see the default vendor ID. It'll have my costs in here, my additional fields. And you see here, select multiple SKUs to do global update. So I could click, hold down Shift or Control, and I could go in and make some global changes here if I wanted to. And that will affect everything. The ones in red just mean that it's different descriptions, or not different descriptions, but we have different values for each one. So here you can see standard cost of $350, and here it's $337. Your cost each is your first cost. Your standard cost is your average inventory cost. So you could see here the ones that were in red just basically tell you that there's some difference there. But I could go in and make those changes. There's also these item master comments that I could put in. If I go next, I get to the vendor item screen. So this will show me information for the vendor, his MOQ, some other vendor part IDs. The ones here in yellow are the ones that I can't update. Well, this was read only, but you might not have MOQ in your host system. So in that case, you would go to that IP dynamic field and say, I want to handle it in the application, and then you'd be able to update it here. Or you could update it in vendor maintenance as well. Here you could click on it, it'll show you the vendor information. You could edit it here. Or again, in vendor maintenance, you could do that as well. And here's a checkbox that shows you the default vendor. If your type was a kit, this would be highlighted. This one actually is SKU type, so it's not highlighted. When I hit next, it's going to show me the assigned product. So this is where I could go in and add it to different offers. And I could add it to multiple offers if I wanted to. One thing to notice is when you're adding products in the wizard, your release flag is automatically set to F. In other words, it's not going to release to master scheduling. So one thing to note is if you do add products through the wizard or add offers through the wizard, come in here, and if you want, update that to true. Placeholder items are automatically set to false because you really don't have that vendor information yet. There are ways you could have it in materials planning, but in most cases you don't do that. So just realize you may want to change the release flag here. You could go to comments and add comments. You could go to page details and add page here. So if you wanted to, you could add page information, page position, page percent, and then multi-page. Here's a page theme. If you set up themes, you could add it here. Multi-page is if it's on more than one page, you could actually add it and be able to select it. So this is one way to change page details. Also within the product grid, there's a way to add update page information. You could do it there as well. So now the next tab is assign SKUs. So here you see no SKUs are found. So I could go and select, and you could hit Control to select 2 of them, or you could select Shift just to select all of them. And then I could click and drag over here. So now I'm adding these SKUs to this offer. Like I said, a lot of people working in product level forecast access the wizard, assign products, and then assign SKUs. Once you do that, you go to data entry. You may want to update some of this information, the unit price or list price possibly, because we can now show the list price or you interface list price, and you could go in and make those changes. You could multi-select. So here, if you wanted to select a bunch, and you could actually do this across offers. So you could go in here if you wanted to update the unit price. Drop down will show you the different unit prices that are set up for those offers. You could select one of those or just enter one of your own. So again, that's a way to go in and update this information directly. If you go to comments, these are all for product SKU comments. I skipped this. In assigned products, this would be what we call the offer product comments. They're different than the product master. These are comments related to the product itself. Okay. All right, after assigning SKUs, the next is the image tab. And this is a fish. I think this was the only thing available. We didn't have suspenders, but this is a way you could assign an image. You could either do it here or you could do it in administration. See, there's product SKU images, or there's a way to bulk load images. You could link it to a file in your server, or bring up a list of images that you have there. You could also link to a website, but it's just a way to add these images here. And this is not a page image, this is what we call a product SKU image. So next tab is the supplier tab. This is where you would see, if you're multi-echelon, you would see all the different locations and whether it's stocked in those locations. You can make updates here. A lot of times this information is interfaced from the host on the item master warehouse record. You could also see your warehouse defaults. So here you see your safety stock, your fill priority will just show, the supplier type and supplier, reorder point, which is different methods for those that used SPO or transfer order, and weeks of supply. So again, a lot of this information now is usually set up in warehouse defaults, but you can edit it here as well. So I would click finish to make the changes. We would validate and update the fields. And then it would save all of the information that I edited. Save failed in supplier. I don't know why. I'm not going to go back. I may have did a drop down that I shouldn't have done. So any questions anyone have on editing the wizard before I get to placeholders? All right, let me go to placeholders. So there's different ways of adding a placeholder. If you click on this product, you have these product options. We could add placeholder items. So this is, I'm not gonna say relatively new, well, it is relatively new. We designed this so you wouldn't have to go through each tab of the product wizard, basically put everything on one screen. So this way, it'll automatically update your next product, and there's a setting for that to set that next product. It will show that this is a required field that's here. So I could call this a, let's say, and again, you may want to put in a more accurate description of something so that you're able to identify it. Product status is P. Coming from this screen, it'll automatically enter your category and subcategory. So it saves the time. You could also enter a unit price up here and a cost each. And because we have vendor ID as required, I'm going to put in a default vendor ID. You could either enter it or the drop down, you could go in and select it. But again, that's not a required field if you don't have it set up that way. Now we get to the item master. So, and yours may be different based on the parameters. We have descriptor 1 as color, 2 as size, and 3 as size. If you're creating a single SKU product, you have these asterisks here, you would just build all. You would select all and build all. Even though it's a single SKU, you do want to have those asterisks set up. But if you are adding colors and sizes, you could click here for add. You could click the drop down and sort by either the code or description, and you could go in here and select, and then hit OK, and then we're adding it. You could also, if you know what it is, you could just click it here and be able to add it. So we're going to add these two. For size and for color, for any of these, you have the ability to also use a template. Now, these templates are set up in administration. This is a quick way to set these up with these different sizes or colors. So if I go in here and do this SML sizing, it has all these codes. So I could quickly select all and build all if I wanted to, or I could just select certain ones that I want here. But actually, for this particular one, I'm just going to make it an asterisk. So, all right, so I'm going to select all and then build all. And you see it's building my SKUs here. There is one required field here, which is standard cost each. I can hit Shift or Control, multi-select, and just enter it here. So I'm going to show the 3 different ways of creating a placeholder. The advantage to this screen is everything is on one screen. It will automatically populate the category and subcategory. The unit price and cost each will copy down. And so there are some advantages for doing it here. It's fairly quick. And then you could click Finish, and it'll build that SKU. And it'll say the data is saved successfully. The other advantage is it'll automatically add it to this offer. Okay, so you see it's already in that offer. I could go in here, I could enter some units, save it. No SKUs exist. So it does add it to the offer, but it looks like you do still have to add the SKUs. So I don't think there's a way to do that in the wizard. So let me go back here, make sure my lot size is set up, which again is something else I could have set up in that other screen. So there are all these things as you go through it that you could see. Okay, and it's rolling the offer. So now I see my units and revenue here for this placeholder item. Now, the second way to create it is new product. So new product, I would come in. You have the option to automatically generate a product ID, which would be the next product. I have to put in a description here. I'm just going to put in anything here. I'm not going to save this. I do have to enter category and subcategory. When you hit this, you can go in and sort here. And then go in and then just add these and hit next. So, and here I would create, just like before, adding the different descriptors. But the advantage to the other screen is it will populate some of these fields, but you're not able to update your user field. So if you create it in that quick placeholder, you'd still have to come in here and update these user fields. And it will automatically add it to that offer, but you saw we had to add SKUs. Here in the wizard, you could automatically add to a number of different offers. So it's pros or cons. You'd have to see which one actually works quicker. I like this one just because it does it quick. And then I would go into the wizard and maybe update some others. But again, that's your choice. The other is copy products. So if I created, let's say, a placeholder, and I want to create another placeholder, and another one after that, I could put in this placeholder, put in my product ID, and it'll automatically copy. It will bring me into the wizard, but I won't have to set up some of that other information. So that's one way to do it here, is to copy a placeholder. You may have an existing product. Let's say you're getting a new product coming in. You could put that product here. You could put in a product ID. You could update the description. And you could also select which SKUs. And then you could copy product. And then what happens is the wizard opens up and you could go in there and make those changes. So the advantage to this is that a lot of this information will already be filled in if you're copying the product. Again, there's some item master fields required. If you didn't have lot size, and I think that's the missing thing here, you wouldn't have it. But you could see for all these SKUs, a lot of this information is already filled in. So if you are getting a new version of a SKU or a product, it would be good to copy it from here, and then you could do your editing. I'm not going to save this one. All right, now that we created our placeholders, we want to do mapping. Now, there's two ways to do the mapping. There's product mapping and SKU mapping. So here you could see in this other screen, product mapping. If I click here, it's going to bring me up a list of all of the placeholder products that I have in this particular offer. So I could then go in there and update these. You see, after I clicked off, it said if you remapped any products and items, don't make any changes until the mapping is completed. One way easier to do it is to right-click to product mapping. So now this will automatically fill in these products. If I go to edit, I could go in and bring in my existing product. Once this has been built in the host system, I could click here. Here's my navy and navy, and click this arrow. Click here and click this arrow. So here's my old SKU and here's my new SKU. And I could go in and submit the job. Now the mapping usually takes, I would say, 2 to 3 minutes or so. But once it disappears, it means that it's in process. So that's one way of doing it. And it says if you remap, don't make any changes. I like that because it will bring up the other SKUs. But the other way to do it is SKU by SKU. In interfaces, SKU remapping. So you could bring in, and actually you do have to put a capital in here if it is capitalized. So I could bring in this one. I could bring in my target SKU. And I could go in and I could remap these. I'm surprised it selected them both. But here you could see the audit ID, the status, and then you could go in and do remap. So the target SKU already exists. Here's this warning message, and I'll say okay. And it says it's waiting to process, and you can refresh the grid. Ah, I did get an error on this one. Again, I'd have to figure out what that's for. But once I do refresh, these will disappear, and then it will show me the remapping. So between the two screens, the product mapping is easier to bring up. It doesn't really give you this messaging and processing. This one here, you would have to go in SKU by SKU to get that done. Now, after a while, and I don't know if we'll have time during this presentation, but if you hit refresh, you would go in and then those SKUs would remap, basically. Like I said, it does take a couple of minutes. This D520 would disappear, and the 20107 would then show here in this product ID. And if I did a search for this D520, which was my placeholder product, it would not appear. It would say SKU does not exist. I don't know why I got an error on that one, but again, it's something we could look at. Let me try one or two more refreshes just to say, no, my D520 is still there. One more time. Okay, so there, the D520 disappeared. There's my 20107, which is remapped into there. It completely replaced it. If I went to maps and I did a search for the D520, it would say no products. The other thing to notice here is when you're in planning, notice the product source. It's no longer there, basically. I have to get out of this screen. So as you add items, it shows a different source. If you do map, there's no description here. I'm wondering if we should put a description, but that's the way it works now, is that there's nothing there. But all of the information I put in D520, all the offers I added to, all of that information is now completely remains, and now it's replaced with this SKU. So placeholders are good for going in, doing that initial work when you had to. You notice that I'm budgeted for 16 items, but I only have 12, so I have a few more to plan. I could add more placeholder items to be able to look at my budget. And then once it comes in, I could do the remapping. Any question on placeholder or SKU remapping?
Nothing at this time.
All right, I'm going to hand it back to Megan. Let this load. Okay.
Okay. All right, thank you. So next month, as we wrap up here, next month we will be reviewing forecasting in a changing economy. So I mentioned that earlier. We have this scheduled for April 23rd. So we'll really just be focusing here on this unpredictable time that we're dealing with and how we can best manage the volatility and the changes that we're experiencing with the forecast. We would love to hear from all of you, anything in particular, any questions or scenarios maybe that you're currently struggling with that you think would be useful for us to cover together. Please mention them in any touch base calls you may have with us, or send us an email, and we'll be sure to get that incorporated into the webinar for next month. All right, let me just double check here that there aren't any more questions. It looks like we're good. All right, so with that then, I'll wrap up here. We appreciate you all joining us, and hope that you and your families all remain healthy and safe here. Have a great rest of your afternoon, and we will then see you again next month. Thank you.